In 1403, the deadly medieval killing machine of the English longbow came face to face with itself for the first time on the battlefield at Shrewsbury, as England was once again at war, and to absolutely no one's surprise, it was once again at war with itself. 4 years prior, King Henry IV of England had usurped the throne from his cousin Richard, and because of this, his kingdom was less than secure, suffering rebellions and attacks from Wales and Scotland, forcing him into costly wars in order to put these down. The English rebellion stemmed from the Percy family, who heavily supported Henry's bid for the throne, and in return they got lands and power in the north. And in return for these titles and responsibilities, when the Welsh and Scottish did attack, they had to bear the brunt financially. The Percys' requests for money from Henry were constantly denied, as his treasury was basically empty, and they were also overlooked for the spoils of war despite being the prominent figures in crushing the rebellion, and it was under Henry Percy, nicknamed Hotspur, perhaps one of the greatest knights in England at the time, where the rebellion would form around. By July, Hotspur was in open rebellion, claiming King Richard is alive, a common rallying cry to deny Henry's legitimacy, even though Richard was long dead, and Hotspur began recruiting an army containing longbowmen from the Cheshire region, which had the best archers England had to offer. The plan was to join forces with the self-proclaimed Prince of Wales and leader of the Welsh rebellion, Owain Glyndwr, and then march on Shrewsbury and take on the actual Prince of Wales, 16-year-old Prince Henry, the future King Henry V, and then march on the king. However, King Henry caught wind of this plan and assembled whatever troops he could from around the Midlands before marching to reinforce his son at Shrewsbury and sending an advance guard to cut off all the bridges to stop Hotspur's march south to join with the Welsh, before King Henry arrived from the east and then cut off Hotspur's retreat to the north. Hotspur now had no choice but to choose the field of battle, which he did just north of the town on a slightly elevated ridgeline, and while contemporary chroniclers tell us that his army was in the region of around 80,000 troops, it was far more likely it was in the region of around 14,000, similar number to the Royal Army, with around 1 to 2,000 longbowmen on each side. The king's force was arrayed into 2 battles of infantry of the archers in front, and the prince commanding a further battle, and he saw the enemy arrayed on the ridgeline, and he knew if he was to advance against the longbowmen who were on higher ground, it would be an absolute bloodbath, so he tried to negotiate, but the Percys were having none of it. The king raised his sword for his vanguard on his right flank to advance first, however the sky soon darkened as they were met with thousands of arrows, and men started screaming out in agony as they were wounded in probably what was a terrifying situation, but they still had to advance forward to get their longbows into range of the ones on the higher ground. It was said that the king's men fell as fast as leaves in the autumn, with every arrow striking a target, however they soon began to run low on arrows, allowing the vanguard to engage them, but they were so broken from the arrow storm, as well as their commander dying in this melee, meaning that the king's right flank now all fled the battlefield, which was around 4,000 troops. The rebels' longbowmen now ran down the slope to retrieve some of the arrows out of the dead bodies to continue firing, and the king now had no choice but to order an all-out advance, sending a message to his son to attack the left flank to divert the attention of the longbowmen. At one point during the battle, Prince Henry was struck in the face by an arrow just below the left eye, piercing his skull. However, he remarkably managed to carry on fighting and somehow managed to survive due to the innovative techniques used by the surgeon. As the brutality raged, Hotspur gambled, launching everything on an assault directly at the king, charging his cavalry through the enemy infantry. However, one of Henry's knights saw the danger and withdrew him from the battlefield, forcing Hotspur to come deeper and deeper into enemy infantry, where at one point they cut down the royal standard bearer. The king's withdrawal had worked, as Hotspur's knights got bogged down within the enemy infantry as their horses' legs were cut from under them, and how Hotspur died, either from an arrow to a face or just a strike from a weapon, is unknown. At one point, one of the king's knights wearing his spare royal armour died, and cries went up of "Harry Percy King," inspiring the rebels. However, the king soon lifted his visor and responded, "Harry Percy is dead," and with no response from the dead Hotspur, the rebels soon realised their leader was gone and fled the battlefield. As thousands lay dead on the bloody battlefield, Henry had survived his biggest test to his reign, crushing the rebellion there and then, instead of allowing it to descend into a massive dynastic conflict, something which happened over 50 years later in England with the Wars of the Roses.